Hi, I'm Dr. Rudy Cashman, and welcome to our show today. I think it's going to be kind of exciting. You know, I'm the wellness director at Lutheran Hospital, and we've been running these shows here for a few years now. And I appreciate you watching. I have a great guest with me today, Paula Jamison, PhD and OT from Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan. She's a graduate of Western Michigan, where they teach a lot of wellness, and she runs a TV show in Kalamazoo, again on the public access programs they have there, and I've been down there, done a few shows myself, thank you to her. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more, Paula, about what you've been doing there, connecting the mind and the body and making people mentally and physically healthier. Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing.
Oh,
sort of similar to what I do, isn't it?
Well, it really is. And Dr. Rudy, thank you so much for having me come down here to visit you. Yes, we've been very busy in Kalamazoo. As I think I told you, Kalamazoo's been fortunate because Western Michigan University has one of the first accredited programs in holistic health. And I'm a product of that program, and I've also taught for it. And Kalamazoo is also the home base of what's called the Fetzer Institute, which is a research institute that funds a lot of mind-body research at major universities around the world. So there's kind of this interest, I think, in the community and a lot of openness to exploring these things. So I'm glad to be here. We've had some great conversations, you and I, already. So
you bet, and we have plans for the future.
We do.
To try to change the community, and then we have to thank the university for leading the way, and yourself, and the Fetzer Institute, which you can get online and have a look at it. And today we'll be speaking about a very interesting subject. You know, I do a lot of teaching about the mind-body connection, which you and I do, that this, how we think affects our body, but how we eat is extremely important. And the message today really is going to be that we don't need to diet. We just need to carefully pick the foods that we wish to eat, and we'll explain to you what we mean by that. It's based on a book that Dr. Joel Fuhrman wrote, The End of Dieting. He's very well known, a good friend of mine. The last 2 times, though, Paula, I beat him in tennis. And that was confirmed to me yesterday. Someone who went to his latest course in Las Vegas, that's the first thing he said. That Cashman beat me.
Well, I think it's really interesting. Here we live in a country where we have such an abundance of food, but we've got an abundance of bad habits about food too. And we're obsessed with diets. I mean, every time you look at a new magazine, there's some new diet. And what you're talking about and what Fuhrman is talking about, the end of dieting, or what, you know, this program was called the non-diet. That is, in a way, kind of radical in today's world, yet it's such a powerful, sensible way of approaching it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, too?
And there's science behind it.
Yes,
there's science behind the work of Dr. Fuhrman and Dr. Esseltine, Dr. Lustig, Dr. Richard Johnson. We're all sort of thinking the same way. And what we are saying, if you eat a nutrient-dense way of eating, you know, foods of color, sort of like your jacket or my tie, but you can add some mushrooms, some onions, and maybe only about 20% carefully selected meat products. You're going to live to be 100 if you don't get run over by a truck, okay?
Well, and
so it's not complicated. You can eat of that, frankly, all you want. You don't have to restrict it. You don't have to, and we're going to review the way of diets that are out there, and based on the work of Dr. Fuhrman. And then I wrote a book, The Secret of the Non-Diet. What I'm saying is, you know, it's just a way of eating with company with a little bit of exercise. You'll be very healthy. And then that's been your experience also.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we've been really working hard to do with young people and students at the university is to try and make them aware that the easiest and the fastest isn't always the best. So to become quite critical and skeptical about processed foods, for example.
Yeah, and to be mindful,
And
right?
to be mindful,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I think it's always dangerous to say to anybody, never do X or Y, because it always kind of sets up this little kid part of us that says, oh, well, wait a minute, of course I'm going to do that because somebody told me not to. But, you know, to be able to say, okay, just because the packaged foods are, I can take it home and I can nuke it and it can be done, doesn't mean that I'm doing myself any favor or the people I love.
Yeah, so we need to pass along knowledge. I think the majority of people, I don't blame them at all, and is that we lack knowledge.
Yes.
You know, it's even in the Bible, Hosea 6:4, we lack knowledge. And that's what we're trying to do today. Dr. David Katz, the biggest health official in the country, frankly, 35 years public health official. I met him personally. I went to his wellness course in Minnesota last year. He's saying, and listen to these stats, 93% of type 2 diabetes, which is the cause of a great amount of chronic disease.
And what
strokes,
they used to call adult onset diabetes, right?
Exactly. Can be prevented by proper lifestyle, avoiding the toxic environment, and what we eat. Right along this line that we're speaking about. 93%, 80% of vascular disease, 60% of cancer can be prevented. Breast cancer, which is a plague to women these days, 50 to 71%, this is based, frankly, right out of the Mayo Clinic book on breast cancer, can be avoided through proper nutrition and exercise. Just think of it. 50 to 71%.
And is part of that that because we don't eat properly, we tend to carry more fat than we should? I mean, this higher incidence of breast cancer and things like that. Is it partly the obesity or is it the nutrition that we're getting?
It is both. The nutrition is not repairing our sick cells, creation of free radicals, but fat has in it estrogen. For example, even if a teenager were to gain some weight, they would start menstruating at age 9 or 8 or 7. Just listen to this. For every year that they menstruate earlier, say 9 or 8, there's an 8% increase in the odds of developing breast cancer in the future.
Just because the body has been exposed to that much more estrogen.
Estrogen, yeah, or if they go through menopause later. I mean, there's unbelievable statistics. So to be a normal weight girl or teenager, for example, I mean, is critical. Unfortunately, the obesity rate has been increasing in the 2 to 6 year age group more than any age group. So what you feed your child becomes very important. And what we're teaching here today is that the combination of the vitamins, the minerals, and the 25,000 phytochemicals, the foods of color, this combination, these nutrients is what leads to good health because they run the enzymatic activity of our body. It's their mosaic, their symphony, their rainbow, the music of interaction, that lead to good health.
Can you say a little bit more about enzymes and what they do, just to help kind of refresh my memory?
They run the chemical reactions of the body. The reactions of the body would not occur. You could not make protein. You could not make muscles. Brain cells wouldn't work. So these are the ones that makes chemical activity to occur. They have no calories in it. So, and they're the nutrients. So Dr. Furman will even call this a nutritarian diet. Not a diet, nutritarian way of eating. If you were to eat that way, all you want to eat, because what I do, and maybe we didn't say not to eat any animal products, but keep it low because it has in it omega-6s, bad fats that cause inflammation of the body. They have enzymes in them that cause cancer, IGF-1, for example, many other enzymes to keep those low, about a 20% level. And you'd be very healthy without following any diet. And exercise, half hour a day, an hour a day, maybe even just 5 days a week. Take a walk. For example, like I did this morning with my glasses on here, watching the birds, and the birds are following me now because I do it every day. You know, some exercise, and it's so relaxing, makes me feel good. So health equals nutrients. We spoke about now, you know what they are now, divided by calories. Divided by, do you agree with that?
I do agree with it. And what I'm hearing too, and this really resonates with me, it's not about eating as something that you've got to make a big deal of. It's really about being kind of relaxed and enjoying the natural abundance in fruits and vegetables, and not trying to set yourself up to say, oh, I can only do this and I can only do that and I've got to just do this little bit and measure it out. It's really enjoying being in your body and enjoying kind of the fruits of nature, the wonderful things that come to us.
How beautifully you explained it. Because these phytochemicals and vitamins and minerals that are in the fruits of nature have already fought off funguses and viruses and bacteria. So when you take them in, they do the same for you.
Well, and I just heard something Monday. There was a show on Diane Rehm, who's on public radio, and it was exactly about that there are people now researching the toxins in the fruits and vegetables and how they actually help us.
Exactly. Because they've been fighting a war.
Exactly.
And when you eat them up, they fight the war for you. You know what the beautiful thing too is something called epigenetics. Suppose you have significant weight loss, and I have pictures on cashmanhealth.com. You can look at them. 3 or 4 people I have on there who are significantly overweight. I'm talking about 300 pounds. Okay. When they ate these more of a vegetable type way of eating, say 80% of the time or so, not exactly 80% of the time, that chemistry, those genetic changes of the vegetables apply in their body, and they now look like movie stars. I get 3 or 4 pictures of them. They weighed 360. I have one truck driver I met at a workout at Planet Fitness. He weighed 360 a year ago. He was in California, coming through town here. Said, "Doctor, you remember me?" And I looked at him. I didn't look familiar to me.
Who are you?
He says, "You spoke to me a half hour, and you had told me to read the work of. You told me how to eat properly, and then you wanted me to read the books of Dr. Furman." I said I didn't have time, so he listened to the Oz show instead. And I don't agree on everything on the show, but a lot of it I do. And Furman was interviewed. He heard it there, and he was now practicing the way Furman was teaching it. You know what he weighed now? 210 pounds.
Good for him.
And he looked very handsome. The genetic structure, the biomathematics, that's called epigenetics. End of our chromosomes are called telomeres. That's something new through epigenetics. So 90% of our chromosomes can be changed by how we use our fingers, our forks, and our feet. And so there's tremendous hope here for a person who's ill, and it's not that big a deal, is it?
Well, in a way, I mean, you know, I can translate to say, in a way, by taking in these kinds of nutrients, you're teaching your body a different way of, you know, processing these things.
Exactly.
And so it's not just, I do this and then if I stop doing it, I'm going to balloon up again, the way some people do if they're on these extreme kind of artificial diets.
Yeah, and I'm going to view those too, because Dr. Furman views if you starve yourself and you say, well, I'm going to lose weight just by restricting my calories, it will not work because it reduces your basic metabolic rate, which is based on, and I want to speak about that a little bit, about something called sitting disease, which involves the basic metabolic rate. If you cut back and say, oh, I'll cut my calories in half, the body will think that you're starving yourself, and it really drop your basic metabolic rate, which is 50% of your calorie burn every day.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot. 50% calorie burn is based on your size, your age, and your sex, but you can't change it a lot. But if you're starving yourself, the BMR will drop, and you won't burn many calories. And eventually, by the boy, they're trying to starve themselves, and you'll say, I'm sick and tired of eating this way, and you start eating. You'll balloon. And because you get smaller, your muscles went away, But now as you get bigger, it's not muscles, it's fat.
And that's part of why you hear that people who have done a lot of these kinds of crash diets, when they finally get serious about losing weight in a healthy way, it may take them a little longer to really get started because their body's got to adjust to this.
And if you have type 2 diabetes already, and you're going to eat this way, which we're speaking about, and you should tell your doctor because your blood sugars will drop quickly. I personally think you could get rid of your type 2 diabetes where you have too much insulin in the blood if you eat this way, probably within a month or two.
Really? Wow.
Franklin House wrote a book called The 30-Day Miracle. It's right in there. Let me speak about sitting disease a little bit. We talked about total calorie burn for a day because this makes losing some weight easier. 50% or so, 60% is your basic metabolic rate based on size and sex. And then we have the thermic effect of food. If you eat pure fatty food, only 4% is used in metabolism. In other words, in digesting it, only 4%. If you eat a nutrient-dense way eating, which I spoke about, you lose 30% because your basic metabolic rate has to increase.
Your body has to work harder to process it.
So if you eat 1,000 calories, say, of high nutrient-dense food, you'll lose 300. Besides, it's not calorie-dense to begin with. Besides, it has a lot of fiber, so you lose a lot. You see what I mean? If you eat this way, you're going to lose a lot of calories just by eating right. Then we get the 40% left called NEAT activity, non-exercise activity thermogenics. That's your activity of everyday living, If you park your car far in the parking lot and while you're going to work versus close up.
Running a vacuum cleaner.
Running a vacuum cleaner or walking the dog or me watching my grandchild while he's playing football for 2 hours, I'm standing up walking around versus another person with me is sitting down and not standing up and not walking. I have 3 times the calorie burn they do. That's called NEAT activity.
And that's also the people that fidget a lot.
Right.
Are burning a lot of calories.
Even when you're chewing gum. That counts.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems so insignificant, but it really does count up.
You add this, you stand up when the phone rings, for example, and you develop this figure out how many calories you can lose that way. 200 calories a day would be 20 pounds in a year. 3,500 calories per pound. Isn't that very interesting?
Well, and
so it's easy to lose weight.
It's amazing, and it's kind of catching on too, because I know a lot of offices now where people are standing up. They've got their desks and their computer stations, and they're not sitting the way they used to.
Exactly. I mean, sugar is really the booger. That's the guy. That's the hooker. And more than fat. 40 years we had the fat theory of vascular disease. It was wrong. Even these people that said it the way it was, they knew it too. They were getting paid money from industry.
Of course.
Sugar is the one because sugars have fructose that goes to the liver, and that is what makes fatty liver. That makes very low density LDL, and that's the little BBs that hit the crevices of your arteries, your 300,000 miles of capillaries, causes vascular disease. So avoiding sugary products is very important. But if you're eating a high vegetable diet, you're going to be eating a little bit of sugar. That's fine. We need it. Our brain needs sugar. But you'll be cutting out automatically a lot of sugar activities. And we all got some addiction to sugar. We need to speak about addiction a little bit too. I know after a stressful day, after 7 o'clock, still there's something sugary around. It's tempting. How about yourself?
Well, unfortunately, I'm one of these people that really has always had a sweet tooth, so I've really had to fight against it because, that would be my path of least resistance. But, it's true, the less sugar you eat, the less you want it. And if you can kind of wean yourself off of it, it's a lot easier. The trouble is all of this hidden sugars in restaurant food and processed food and things like that. And I know people that have been very diligent about eliminating all these obvious sugar sources, and yet if they go out for a restaurant meal and they haven't had dessert, but they come back and they say, that craving has just hit me again. Where did that come from?
Especially when they bring out that tray and give you a sample of everything.
Well, even when they haven't had
Can you resist that? I have a heck of a time.
Somebody, I have a friend that's done very, very well over the years, but she'd say, I'm so proud of myself because I didn't have dessert. I turn down the tray, but there was something either in the salad dressing or in the sauce, and it just kicked that whole craving thing right back into motion.
Yeah, it does. And detoxing from sugar, you know, thought to take 21 days, break a habit, but for some of us longer. And even although I ate, I think, perfect 90% of the time, I still got that in me. I mean, I outlaw it in the house, but occasionally it sneaks in there, birthday party, you know, Christmas. So to me, failure is not having a plan. We all get failures every other day a little bit.
Well, and you learn from your failures too, so that's okay.
And you learn things from that. So avoiding sugar is critical. But if you eat a nutrient-dense way, you're avoiding sugar most of the time.
Mostly you are.
Pretty automatically. And then Dr. Furman would say, if you add a few nuts to your salad, for example, I mean, he would say, eat a big salad at least once a day, a big salad. And you add a few nuts to that, that will increase your absorption of the phytochemicals, vitamins, and minerals about 10 times. Isn't that great news? And
but you need a little of that, of those good fats to help digest those greens, for one thing.
Absolutely. We need good fats for our hormones. Our brains are largely fat. So you don't want a zero-fat diet. You just want to eat organic type meats instead of things where there's pesticides and herbicides and they raise them in a cage and they have troughs going by of fatty substances. That's the unhealthy stuff. So if you eat steak 7 days a week, it's not going to work out.
Probably not. No.
And lamb and pork chops are very fatty, full of omega-6s and cancer factors. So you have to kind of try to get away from that. So we have good fats, bad fats. Most people are eating a sad, fat, salt, sugar American diet. And when you look around and you know, you go to a wedding, you go to a restaurant, you look around, and we're not being critical. This is a no judgment zone. But I treat the products, the chronic diseases, and you and I are trying to change that.
Well, and what we try to tell our students too, it is kind of a systemic thing. It's not just that people are making bad choices. A lot of times they don't perceive that they have a choice at all. You know, it's what's easy, it's what they can afford, it's not something, and a lot of people don't grow up learning to cook anymore. I saw this in the OT program at the university, because one of the assessments that we would teach our students to give to people that had problems, you know, with dementia and things, was to take them into the kitchen and have them cook a simple breakfast. And so we'd have these kids say, okay, well, you know, we're going to have your patient cook a soft-boiled egg. And the student would come up to me sort of and say, you're going to have to tell me how to cook a soft-boiled egg. So, you know, I mean, that's a whole level of
I think to learn to cook is a wonderful thing. Dr. Mark Hyman, who wrote the famous book, Blood Sugar Solutions, whose name is also on the Daniel Plan, A Great Way Through Spirituality, and I teach some of that. His family will not start the evening meal, the cooking process, till he's home. Now, as a neurosurgeon, which I had been for 44 years,
your family would have starved.
Be starving. But it's a wonderful habit. It's family togetherness. Where almost what food you give is almost irrelevant if you're all together. Because your choices, you know, will improve. Food is addictive. This statistic will blow you away, frankly, that sugar is 4 times more addictive than cocaine. That's been proven. I debated on TV with somebody, and I think she wanted the debate. So that's something to remember. The addictive circuitry, the nucleus accumbens, responds to sugar.
Well, it makes sense. As human beings, until fairly recently, most of us didn't eat much sugar. It was, I mean, and when we had a chance to eat it, we went after it because it was such a quick source of energy. But Europeans, Northern Europeans, until they started importing sugar from the Caribbean, it was very rare and very expensive.
Yes, and you know, the English were eating 5 pounds of sugar a year around 1750, and then slavery made it economical. But you know, since we brought this subject up, the people involved with slavery, the slaves themselves, they starved them. They give them
That's
breakfast,
right.
didn't give them lunch. You know what they ate to supplement their food?
The sugar cane.
Sugar cane.
That's
And
right.
they were eating it, and they still have it in their genetic structure. So they're more sensitive to sugar, something they must keep in mind, especially Asians, Africans, some Indians, because the Indians, when slavery was outlawed, the Indians came in from
right.
India, and they were the serfs on the slave plantation. So these people are more sensitive to sugar. You look at Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Korea, they exploded with obesity and type 2 diabetes.
Well, and in a way, that's
yeah.
what we're doing to ourselves now, too,
Yeah.
because we have so much sugar in so many things. So to be able to be mindful and pull back from that is really
I think
important.
that's a big one, to be mindful, because let's face it, you eating a donut, you're taking some cocaine or morphine, whatever it is, same circuitry. If you think of it that way, maybe you'd be a little more hesitant. But like I said, this is a judgment-free zone, because we all have some trouble with it. You just try to limit.
Well, and there's
that
a
trouble.
time and a place for these things. And I mean,
Yeah.
I even remember growing up, and it was a while ago, but it's not forever ago, that sugary treats, they really were treats. They were something that you did not have every day. We didn't have dessert every day. Our big thing as little kids was we got a nickel and we went to the candy store on Friday after school. But it was once a week, you know, and that's not the way it is anymore.
Yeah, and mothers should watch the amount of sugar they give to the children, because they become addicted to it. And to me, if you're trying to change that habit in a child, just buy the right food and barely bring it up, because they're going to eat what you buy. They ain't got any money. You know what I mean? To make a big deal of it every time might not be appropriate. Sugary sodas account for 50% of overweight and obesity, so that's one that absolutely needs to be cut out.
Say something about that too, because sugary drinks, we don't really, if you drink a sugary drink, my understanding is your body doesn't feel satisfied afterwards either.
Because it's hitting the addictive circuitry.
Immediately.
It doesn't turn off your appetite, and you just want to drink more and then eat more sugary products, and then you say, well, I'll use non-diet drinks or supplements, sugar. That doesn't work, because they change your brain. They make you think it's very sugary, and the next thing is like even the best of the things compared to aspartame, for example, like stevia, will increase your appetite for sugar 300 times.
Because you're not getting any of the satisfaction that sugar would give you.
No satisfaction. It has effects in the hypothalamus, and people who use these things are more likely to have belly fat. And I also remind you, there are other skinny fat people, especially Asians, who have fat in their liver, and they may be of normal weight, and they're very unhealthy. So blood work leads the way. If you're overweight, you should be checked for pre-diabetes, diabetes. And today they test the fasting blood sugar as being the first test. They need to get a 6-hour glucose tolerance test where the fasting blood sugar and the serum insulin. If you don't get that, you're going to get diagnosed at stage 3 or 4 diabetes, and by that time you could have cancer, heart disease. Already,
it just doesn't catch it early
already
enough.
have had an unannounced heart attack in the pre-diabetic stage. You can go on YouTube, cashmanhealth.com, look at some of my previous, or you and I's previous shows on that.
Right, when we talked about type 2 diabetes.
We spoke about that previously. Dr. Frummer will speak a lot about, and myself in my non-diet book, about nuts, a good way to, because they have fiber in them, they have some good omega-3 fats in them, and there's some carbs in there. We need some carbs, but they turn your appetite off. And the good one, I think, if you're going to keep something in your car, don't turn your car into a kitchen like I have on occasion. In the
first place, the squirrels will get in there.
Yeah, exactly. But to eat some, we're getting hungry and stuff, instead of stopping at a fast food place and you're getting an apple pie, have a few nuts. And I'm not even picking the ones particularly. I like macadamia nuts. I mean, they have a little fat on them, but they're good fats. And they kill my appetite like that. You have about 5 of them.
And roasted versus raw nuts, what can you say?
And raw would be better, but and not salted, because salt isn't good for you, pulling fluid. And then if you have high blood pressure, that's a problem. So and as Dr. Furman already said, if you use seeds, like sesame seeds, are very high in calcium, which is kind of interesting, leads to another quick point, speaking about calcium. Milk, Dr. Furman, myself, we don't consider that, we consider that to be liquid meat because of the casein is very carcinogenic, helps cause type 1 diabetes.
And a lot of people have trouble digesting it.
And a lot of people don't have the enzyme.
Right.
Africans don't have the enzyme at all. Asians maybe 3/4, whites maybe 50%.
Right.
So milk is not a health food. Read Whitewash by Key On. Make up your own mind. It's this thick a book. I'm not saying don't drink milk, but if you read this book and you're still drinking milk, I'll be surprised. Especially with the hormones in it, kids will start menstruating earlier. Remember I said, per year they menstruate earlier. Breast cancer rate go 8%. So should you be giving milk to a child after age 2 is not appropriate, Dr. Furman would say, and I am to agree with that. There can be different opinion, and we're open to that.
Well, and there are lots of other sources, as you were talking about sesame seeds, there are lots of other sources of calcium that we can find from our diet. The dark leafy greens are very rich in calcium. You know, there are a lot of things out there that and I kind of learned this because I went through a brief phase, it was too hard for me, but of being a vegan and doing not just all vegetarian, but not having any animal products at all. And I did find that very difficult. But what I did learn, I mean, part of the learning curve was, well, there's all kinds of great calcium sources out there.
Absolutely.
You know, and there you can, if you're paying at all attention to your diet, you can still get very balanced calcium.
Absolutely. Spinach is full of it, and you don't need to drink milk to get your calcium.
That's
It's
right,
better absorbed actually through vegetables. The same thing with protein. Let's speak about protein a little bit. You know, usually, I mean, the average would be 0.5 grams per pound of protein. Okay. Most Americans, because they eat a lot of meat products, they're taking in 100 to 200 grams a day. It's very hard on the kidneys. It leaches out calcium out of the bones because the body becomes acidic.
Yes.
So those products are not very healthy for you. But like broccoli, for example, has twice the protein per 100 grams, twice the protein 100 grams of meat. Would you believe that? People don't understand that. So eating vegetables gives you plenty of calcium, plenty of protein, and the rate that we're eating is very hard on our acidity in our blood, leaching out calcium, and increased cancer factors if you're eating the bad proteins.
Now, there's still an impression out there, and this came from quite a while ago. Adele Davis, or one of those people back in the 60s, talking about, well, to get complete protein, to get all of the enzymes that animal protein would bring you, you have to combine various vegetable and grain proteins. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, LaPay published a book, you know, and it was read all over the world, where she's saying to get the proper protein, you need to eat animal products. Then she wrote a book about 15 years later saying that she was wrong, but that book hardly anybody read. So you don't need to eat animal products to have big muscles. I mean, just look at the animals. Look at the horses. Look at the hippopotamus, and look at them. They're vegetarians.
That's right. Yes.
Okay? I think that proves the point. They're total vegetarians. As a matter of fact, I fed a gorilla at a zoo in San Diego once. I have a picture of him on my cell phone. I had this much class between me and him. And he's eating cabbages. And look at his muscles.
He's eating a lot of cabbages.
I think he had bigger muscles than I did. And then he's eating a lot of cabbages, and it was a silverback. His name is David. So if you go to San Diego Zoo, say, hi, David.
I'll go visit David.
I'm a friend of Dr. Cashman. And maybe get a gluten test. I mean, you talk about a gluten, there's still a little bit of controversy there.
Yes.
But wheat has been genetically modified. It was done by a doctor in the Rockefeller Institute in Mexico around 1947 or so. And he hybridized wheat, for example, and it's been so changed that he was then able to feed the whole world. China increased the yield 10 times but they never tested it in humans. And now we're finding there's quite a bit of reaction from our gut, even from our brain. Sometimes we get seizures, and a lot of people get misdiagnosed who have a gluten problem. So to get a gluten test, that's important. Yeah, the doctors even today in the United States don't fully accept that. But you go to Australia, 90% of the doctors check your gluten level, or Italy. The U.S. is 5%. So I think to read Wheat Belly by Davis, for example, might not be a bad idea.
Well, when I was diagnosed as gluten intolerant about 8 years ago or so, and that was one of the interesting things that I read, was that if you lived in Europe and you went in with the same series of complaints that I had, it might take you a year and a half to get a sound diagnosis. In the States, it could take 10 to 12 years.
Take 10 years.
Because people just don't.
I picked up 3 people with a Planet Fitness working out. Yeah, they said, well, I'm going to have my ovaries removed and all sorts of things you can have done. I said, they get a gluten test, then she got a gluten test. Then I didn't hear from her. 6 months later, I see this beautiful redhead pumping away in a bike. She says, come over here, Dr. Cashman. She told me the story.
That's great.
She said that was the answer. And I've seen that in cancer too. They have increased rates of cancer with gluten.
Well, and it's one of these two-edged swords, because it's become kind of a fad too. And so you've got all these companies jumping on the bandwagon and making gluten-free, basically it's gluten-free junk food.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so you've got to be a little
careful
about that.
That the substitute foods are going to feed you very carbohydrate dense, and you got to be careful. They may not have gluten in them, but you got to read the labels. Let's review a little bit especially from Dr. Furman's book. He went through the different diets. Remember, I said no diet.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Eat all the nutrient dense foods you want, 20% meat products, and you're going to be very healthy. Is that complex? That's not complex. And, but he reviewed like the paleo diet, okay? And they recommend so many meat products. At the end, that's very upsetting to Dr. Furman, and it will be to me. And he says the paleo diet, Dr. Furman says, dead like a caveman.
Well, and who knows what cavemen really ate? I mean, the world that they lived in was so different from ours.
So different. The plants were totally different, and we don't exactly know exactly what they ate. We got some ideas, but then he mentions the Atkins diet. There's some things I like about it. Dr. Atkins' book, and on page C63, he describes the stages of diabetes, based on the work of Dr. DeFranzio, I don't know whether you knew it since the last show, and he has 46 scientific references that Atkins said reduce the sugar. But let's face it, he was right.
On that, he was totally right.
Totally right.
Spot on,
At the end, he recommends so much meat that is too much. But that was a different time, too. So let's give him a little bit of credit, because people really...
And he was truly radical at the time, too. I mean, that
really
was
radical.
Really radical.
But he sold millions of books. And but I think it was probably too much meat at the end, but he cut down the sugar. And he was open about it, you know what I mean? But DeFranzio, the one he ran the references from, I got a hold of most of those papers, read them. 46 scientific references. You know, I got him on the phone the other day. Guy my age, maybe a little older, was getting on the plane to go to China for the American Diabetic Association meeting. And you know what's interesting was, I asked him about the Atkins thing and the stage of diabetes, because I don't find any doctors look at it like that, except Dr. Harmon. Mark Hyman, Blood Sugar Solutions, he looks at it that way. That'd be a good one to print off the internet, incidentally. Mark Hyman, How to Speak to Your Doctor. It's 40 pages.
He is a really good resource.
Really good resource.
Really good resource.
Good website.
And he expresses things very clearly. He's good.
He's right on it, especially the early testing. It's just like, in essence, like Atkins, but he adds one stage to diagnose your pre-diagnosis very early, because remember I said that complications occur at stage 3 or 4. Well, we in this country are diagnosing people today. That's a bit upsetting to me. So get that glucose tolerance test.
Get it while it's still at the silent stage.
And the full explanation is on Mark Hyman, How to Speak to Your Doctor. Great website. Print that off and read it, and you'll get your diagnosis. But the interesting was, when I spoke to Dr. DeFranzio, he had not read Atkins' book.
Really? Interesting.
Didn't know about the stages of diabetes. So I think the pharmaceutical industry is getting a hold of him. They have them centered or something. You know what I mean? I was amazed. I was just amazed because I think it's a correct. And the other high protein diets were the Sugar Busters diet, the South Beach diet. I've read all those books. And the Duken diet is from Europe, D-U-K-E-N. It was an all meat diet, which is just ridiculous because you go.
We're not carnivores, are we?
Then you go into ketone metabolism, which can affect your brain, electrolyte imbalance, and that can be very dangerous. And Dr. Furman discusses this in detail in his book. I mean, what are we speaking about here? As high dense nutrient eating. We didn't say all fat is bad.
Right.
We got omega-3 fat, omega-6 fat. The good fat is the omega-3. You get it from nuts. You get it from good fish. When you order some fish, you ought to ask where did it come from. If it came from a pond, it's been fed corn products, fat products.
Farmed fish is a little.
Farmed fish is a little borderline. Not that. If you eat it once or twice a week, probably not going to do a lot. But 90% of the fish we order in restaurants today, including the country club I ate at last night, it says Scottish salmon. You know where it's from? Fish pond.
Yes.
Had the waiter admit it to me, and I asked the new manager to change that. Hadn't done it yet. And
that's too bad. Yeah.
Well, so be it. And and we speak about empty calories. What does that mean? Empty calories. Empty calories, remember, health equals nutrients divided by calories. So the calories are empty. There's no nutrients in it. Meat has no nutrients. It has no nutrients in it. So, I mean, that's the point.
Well, and so many of the empty calories that are these hyper-processed snack foods, for example. You know, and that's part of it too. And we talk to our students about when you go to the grocery store and shopping in the perimeter of the grocery store, where you have relatively real, unprocessed food, as opposed to going up and down the aisles of the snack foods, which you know, take corn and process it on 70 levels, and each level that you process it, you can add something to the cost, and a lot.
Right, and they watch very carefully. Sometimes, for example, fructose, they don't have to put it in food. I didn't realize that. You find it in some labels, but fructose, remember, is the bad sugar.
Right.
While on the subject of nutrient-dense food,
yes.
I'm going to do a TV show on this sometime in the future. You and I can do it together. The 150 healthy foods. Great book.
Oh, yes.
I was going to make it part of the show, but I didn't have enough time.
Right.
But what are the phytochemicals in each food? And it's beautiful, beautiful book.
Well, and it's perfect. I mean, you talk about colors too, and you talk about, and here's your dark blue, and your yellow orange, and your red. I mean, the foods will attract our eye and sort of tell us, will invite us to eat them if we let them.
You know, I'm glad you brought it up about the color in food. The darker they are, the more phytochemicals they have in them. And that's how the plant fought off the funguses and the viruses and the bacteria. The darker the color, the more phytochemicals are in them. Isn't that neat?
Yeah,
but when you eat those phytochemicals, that's going to happen in your body. It'll change your cellular metabolism, lead to good health. The enzymatic activity will change, and you don't have to diet. The weight will just fall off you.
Well, and we like to talk with our students about that too, to encourage them to go for a colorful plate. You know, don't just eat white and brown.
You got it.
Which was actually, my dear father was a meat and potatoes guy, and my sister-in-law used to say, yeah, your dad, everything had to be white or brown.
Oh yeah, we all have our old habits, and this is a judgment-free zone.
Well, and he was a good German kid, you know, and they didn't have any money.
Talking about German, you know.
But they didn't have any money when he was growing up. That was what they ate.
Actually, my father ran a German deli in New York. So what do you think?
Yummers.
What do you think I've been eating? You know what I mean?
Salami,
but over time, I gained information now, and I went back to delicatessen, the Connie delicatessen in New York recently, and I literally almost ran out of there. And I even met the owner or the manager, and we spoke, and he runs a cooking show actually on TV.
Oh, neat.
Incidentally, while speaking about cooking, the good recipes in Furman's book, Dean Ornish's books, Esseltine's books, good recipes in there. But recently, I looked at the Martha Stewart's latest book, and I have nothing to do with her. Clean Slate by Martha Stewart. I'll be honest with you, there is nothing in there I would not eat.
Well, isn't that great?
Good. And she had Chef Stewart, and there's 50 pages of explanation. She has juicing in there too, which I think is a good thing to do, because it concentrates the phytochemicals. So we have some smoothies, which probably is a little better because it still has the fiber. So I think to have a smoothie every day, that's a concentration of phytochemicals. That leads to good health. You can add a few things to it, you know, to even make it healthier than that, some flax seeds or something, or anything else you think might be healthy, and add it to your smoothies, or some juicing. And it'd be a very healthy thing to do, because that's really doing what we're speaking about here. And we need to do a little exercise, you know, we spoke about, is important, because especially as we get a bit older, even if our weight doesn't change, we lose about 3% of our musculature per year, and it's what takes its place. We may be the same, fat.
Right. Which
leads to diabetes of the elderly. That could be avoided. So I think,
and we do sort of settle. Gravity does its work too, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And let's face it, we have in our body, which I didn't realize myself, actually, we have that many. We have in our body 50 hormones. I thought it was 12 or something. No, and the interaction of these 50 hormones, especially as we age, and especially in females, when they ovulate, when they menstruate, is constant hormonal changes. And it affects the dopamine activity in the body. They make anxious, make them depressed, makes them want to eat more. And then there's menopause. Can you imagine? Yes, you can imagine the hormonal changes in the human body. So we have to pay attention. That's why at menopause, a lot of women explode, because the circuitry is changed up here, and they're using sugar in an addictive way.
To help cope with
feel good.
Yes, exactly.
They're traveling down here, and they just like to have a day where they feel normal. So we're not blaming them, but we're saying that's going to happen. So you need to get to the gym. You need to eat nutrient-dense food, because those phytochemicals will turn your appetite down. But the minute you get addicted to sugar, you just keep on exploding. And I think this happens to college kids too. They start going to college, a lot more stress, and almost every college kid gains 20 pounds.
That's right, yes. What is the freshman 15 or whatever they used to call it?
Whatever it is. I mean, it's very interesting. And the thing you don't want to do is to have your weight constantly go up and down, because your body will get tired of that and set a certain level of BMR, and you'll have a heck of a time losing weight. So make a plan, be mindful, look at the food, and keep it simple. You know what I mean? If you eat this way, you don't have to diet. And starvation does not work. I said that again. Starvation, because it reduces your basic metabolic rate.
Well, and part of that too, I mean, it's very hard on your body physically. It's also very isolating to starve yourself, socially isolating. And we haven't really talked, we talked a little bit at the beginning about preparing and eating together is such an important thing too, this sort of social combining the body and the mind and the spirit and the community. It's all there. Food does it.
You know, we spoke about it before, and probably it might be worth mentioning today a little bit, the mind-body connection, which is really where you and I start. Candace Pert's work.
Exactly.
And a wonderful book. I met somebody at a dinner who had read the book too, and a psychologist of all places.
Great.
And what Candace Pert really said in 1972 is that our neurotransmitters, the things that jump between our nerves, our hormones, and our neuropeptides, which insulin would be an example, adrenaline would be an example, which can be secreted by a thought process or what we eat, speak to our body, because Candace Pert discovered the opiate receptor sites, that every cell, 70 trillion cells, have on it receptors, and these neurotransmitters, hormones, speak to our cells. So our brain speaks to our body. Then she discovered that the monocytes in our blood system, our Army, Navy, and Air Force, also make those, and they in turn speak to the brain.
And isn't that just amazing?
And it just
we're starting to learn more
Yeah.
and more. We're amazing creatures.
when you think of the institute in Michigan, the FETSA Institute, that's really what they're talking about. But what amazes me, medicine today, though, most providers don't know that. You know, we used to speak about neurasthenia, hysteria. I gave you this interesting book to read on neurasthenia. Wasn't that a great book?
That was a wonderful book.
A lot of those institutes were in Michigan. And the FETSA Institute, I think, probably was a product of that, and how significant of illnesses we see as physicians are based on the thought process of the person. Stress, for example.
Absolutely.
And stress makes us eat too. So a pot belly can be a sign of a stressed individual, for example. And that our body in turn can speak to us. See, it was Hippocrates and these physicians in the past had dualism, you know, where the mind and the body are separate, and then Descartes, 1635, cut the head of the body, gave it to the church, the body to science.
It was all politics in those
politics,
days.
and we still treat medicine today as it's body medicine. No, it's the mind and the body. So the mind-body connection is critical.
Well, and that's one of the things I think that some of the traditional non-Western approaches to medicine can bring to us in the West, because they didn't necessarily do that. They didn't separate out the mind and the body. You know, whatever other things that we may be skeptical about some of these other forms of healing, their basic premise is something that we got rid of so long ago, and we're still trying to recover from it.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with what pays a little bit. You know, we got
absolutely.
organ doctors. How many mind-body doctors do we have? You know what I mean?
Not so many.
That frustrated me in neurosurgery a bit, because there's a lot of people presenting to me as physical presentation of stress. When the X-rays show a 6-page report about the natural process of aging, and they're trying to make a disease out of it. So this is a real problem. You know, it's fast foods. What are some fast foods? Sugar makes it a fast food. Sugar gets absorbed in the bloodstream, bango, right in the bloodstream. It affects the brain. White bread. Olive oil, oils, you know, always such a good stuff. Well, olive oil is 100% fat. It will be in your bloodstream in 4 minutes. Not many people know that. Versus if you've eaten fat, about 4 hours. They'll just sit on or whatever. Even white potatoes without their skin are sugar. Flour is sugar. There's about 50 different names for sugar, and you have to learn them. You know, agave and maltose, and you got to learn the 50 names of sugar. They're in books. You can get them on the.
Well, and you have to read labels, and that's me. I mean,
you
have to learn the language and read the labels.
Juices, orange juice, very high sugar content. Eat the orange itself because of fiber. You're talking about fruit. Dr. Frum would say in his book, eat 2 or 3 pieces of fruit is fine. Michael Gherkin on nutritionalfacts.com. You can get him on the internet. Very good. He research has supported maybe eat all the fruit you want because of fiber, but you're diabetic, you got to check it. You know.
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, not everybody is coming to the table with the same issues, and if you're diabetic, you've got to be careful about these things.
You got to know what your issues are. The glucometer is important. But I like to remind people, though, if you get type 2 diabetes, 90% chance you could get rid of it through exercise and proper nutrition, like I've been speaking about, and your sugars will drop quickly. Slow food will be still cut oats, nuts, beans, many fruits, and fat storage hormones actually are insulin. You know, insulin helps the people, the type 1 diabetic, which is children save their lives. Benjamin Best invented it, but the type 2 diabetic who cannot get the insulin into the cell because the fat is making these triglyceride, these receptors sticky. It's called insulin resistance. But so the insulin level increases before the sugar. But insulin is an anabolic hormone, makes you fat. Insulin makes you fat. It inflames your joints. So a lot of hip disease, knee disease is due to sugar combining with proteins depositing your joints, and that's why they all need joint replacements.
Have you ever done what a couple of my colleagues had done for Holistic Health, which I thought was wonderful, which was they took people on a tour of the grocery store.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And I think that's such a helpful thing too, and particularly, again, people that are sort of new to cooking.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful way
Thank
to...
you for suggesting that. Actually, Dr. Arula, a pediatrician in town, he can't believe what we've done. We took them on tours and we gave cooking classes to children. And of course, they brought their mothers, once a month, and he's a better cook than I am, so he would cook. His house now is really a garden, front and back. He's got everything you could dream up, all kind of condiments and everything. You could. Here's a pepper. Here's arugula. I mean, here's spinach. It's Dr. Arula.
Well, and it's
what
so
a
great.
doctor.
It's so great
and to see it as a pediatrician. Isn't this wonderful?
It's so great to get kids involved, because I think kids that sort of have been with vegetables.
Yeah, and the kids love it.
They would.
Children love it even more than their parents.
I
The
think
children are teaching their parents.
Absolutely.
I think cooking, as you mentioned multiple times here, is critical. We all need to pay attention to that. So we need to start with a commitment, knowledge. We're trying to provide knowledge today. Join our other shows, cashmanhealth.com.
Yes.
Probably 80 TV shows in there, all through public access TV, which we thank them so much, and you're doing it also in Kalamazoo, and we're going to try to expand it. So you got to have knowledge. If it takes religion to change you, use the Daniel Plan, a book out, Daniel Plan by Rick Warren and Mark Hyman. I teach off of that in some churches. I actually did yesterday, matter of fact. There are no shortcuts. You can't live in delusion and denial. I mean, if you're overweight, and you may even have a normal fasting blood sugar, but get that serum insulin done, you may be pre-diabetic, and most of the complications of type 2 diabetes occur in pre-diabetes, including cancers. Uterine cancer, 75% is due to obesity. Ovarian cancer, about 40%.
Wow.
So it's critical, that we have some knowledge. Anything you'd like to add a little bit? And let me mention the ferments. G-bombs, you know about that, about using greens and beans and onions and mushrooms and berries, so he calls it G-bombs, full of phytochemicals. And you're familiar with that acronym.
And I think one of the things I would just like to add is, with a little bit of skill, you can make absolutely delicious things out of this. This is not some kind of austere, you're not going to have to suffer to do this. This is a wonderful way of eating. I mean, you can make just soups and casseroles and stews.
Matter of fact, much more tasty.
Exactly.
And I was referring to, again, to that Martha Stewart book. Read that book, Clean Slate. A doctor in the Canaldus in town said to me the other day, if we could bring in a chef, Rudy, and eat this way the rest of our life, I'd do it.
Yeah.
And I just found somebody else who's willing to do it. Mark Deister runs a big machine company. He says, I'll do it, Rudy.
Well,
and so there's three of us, and I think you'd do it. It's very healthy.
And one of the heartening things is there's a lot of talk out there now about clean food. And what is meant is just real, what I would call real food.
Yeah. And thanks so much for being on my show.
Well,
Hope we do it again.
This was a pleasure.
And maybe I can get up to Kalamazoo
I hope so.
and help you with a show there. And I think we're trying to change what we did. Paula, it's just been my
it's a pleasure, Dr. Rudy.
My pleasure.
It's so much fun.
And
thank you very much.
Folks, for watching the show and join our other shows. We're on Mondays, Wednesdays, they show it around here, and then on Kalamazoo.
I don't know when it'll be, but I'm sure it will be soon.
They'll have the show also.
Thank you.
We love you all. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.